I caught her red-handed. That plastic hose snaking across my yard wasn't mine. It was hers. And the worst part, the water she was stealing wasn't just my water. It was the same supply that fed the entire street, including her own house. I remember standing there at 6 in the morning, coffee mug trembling in my hand, steam curling into the air as my stomach sank. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly. Steady. Guilty. SHHHHHH. The low hiss of a hose quietly robbing me blind. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was dreaming. But no. The evidence was right there. Shiny green hose hooked into the valve of my private tank, sneaking under the hedge, leading to Karen's property like some dirty little secret trail. Are you kidding me? I muttered under my breath, half in disbelief, half boiling with rage. Karen, our homeowners association president, the self-proclaimed protector of neighborhood standards, always walking around with her clipboard, barking at kids for riding scooters too fast, scolding people for leaving trash cans out 5 minutes late, snapping photos like she was running some FBI operation. And here she was, draining my water like some cartoon villain. The hypocrisy was suffocating. I walked closer, each step crunching against the gravel. The hose rattled as if it knew it had been caught. My chest tightened, heat rising into my face. I wanted to yank it out right then, storm over to her door and slam it against her porch. But something stopped me, because in that moment, I realized this wasn't the first time. No wonder my tank had been running low every week. No wonder my water bills had been creeping up even though I barely used it. And then it hit me like a freight train. The tank wasn't just mine. It was part of an emergency system I'd installed years ago. A system approved by the county, tied into a backup line that supplied every house on our street. Oh God, Karen wasn't just stealing from me. She was bleeding the whole neighborhood dry without even knowing it. I took a shaky breath, the kind that feels like a knife sliding out of your chest. Do I confront her right now? Do I grab my phone and record? Or do I play it smart? Real smart and let this snake expose herself? I chose the third option. The next afternoon, I set up cameras. Tiny ones, hidden in plain sight. A GoPro tucked behind the hedge. Another near the water valve. One across the street in my mailbox with a perfect wide shot. Every angle covered. My hands shook while screwing the mounts in. Adrenaline humming like static in my veins. And sure enough, the witch came back. Karen strutted down her driveway, looking left and right like a kid sneaking cookies. Clipboard in hand. Sunglasses perched on her nose. Acting like she was out for some inspection. But her feet carried her straight to my tank. Her movements rehearsed. Casual yet hurried. She twisted the valve with one flick. Creak. Then plugged in her hose like she owned it. I almost laughed. The audacity. My cameras captured every second. Her smug little smirk. The way she tapped her foot impatiently while the hose hissed to life. The way she glanced back at her house as though checking if her husband was watching. She had no idea she was digging her own grave. One stolen gallon at a time. And oh, the best part. That evening, we had the monthly homeowners association meeting. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and dusty carpet. The kind of place where drama always unfolds under fluorescent lights. Neighbors sat in the rows of metal chairs, murmuring, tapping their phones, whispering complaints. Karen stood at the front with her gavel, her face plastered with that fake pageant smile she wore whenever she wanted to control the room. All right, everyone, let's bring this meeting to order, she chirped, smacking the gavel. Clack. The sound was sharp, cutting. Now, before we get into new business, I'd like to remind everyone about responsible water use. Our neighborhood has had unusually high utility costs, and it's come to my attention that some residents may be wasting water unnecessarily. The hypocrisy almost knocked me out of my chair. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. The neighbors nodded, sighing. whispering, looking guilty even though they hadn't done a damn thing. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. I, for one, have been very conscious about my water use. We should all set a good example, don't you think? That's when I stood up. My chair scraped back, loud enough to turn every head. Oh, absolutely, Karen, I said, my voice calm, sharp. We should all set a good example, which is why I think we need to talk about this. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the projector with a click. The screen flickered, then lit up with crystal clear footage. Karen, in broad daylight, kneeling at my tank, her hose plugged in, her smug face glancing around like a guilty raccoon, the hiss of water gurgling into her line. The room erupted. Gasped. Murmurs. A sharp what the hell. From the back row. Karen froze, her mouth half open, color draining from her cheeks. She fumbled for her words. That's not. That's edited. Oh, it gets better, I said, flipping to another angle. This time, the close-up. Karen's manicured hand twisting the valve. Her sunglasses reflecting the tank. Perfect evidence. A neighbor in the front row shook his head. That's my water too, isn't it? Another woman whispered fiercely. So she's the reason my bill's been insane. Karen stammered. No, you don't understand. I was just checking for leaks. Leaks. With a hose leading to your backyard. I shot back, my voice echoing. Karen, you've been draining a system that supplies the entire street. You've been stealing from every single one of us. The room buzzed with anger. Whispers turned to shouts. Someone yelled, "Resign." Another shouted, "You're done, Karen." She slammed her gavel desperately. Clack, clack, clack. Order, order. This is a misunderstanding. But her voice cracked. She knew it was over. By the end of the night, the vote was unanimous. Karen was stripped of her homeowners association presidency, banned from handling community resources, and handed over to the county water authority for investigation. She tried to storm out with dignity, but the door slammed behind her like a punchline. The twist. 2 days later, the water authority confirmed she'd been siphoning so much that she triggered a pressure drop in the emergency hydrants down the block. If there had been a fire, we could have lost half the street. And then came the final blow. The county fined her thousands. Her insurance rates skyrocketed. And because the whole ordeal made local news. Oh yes, the footage went viral. Her reputation was shredded beyond repair. People at the grocery store whispered behind her back. Parents pulled their kids away when she walked by. Even her own allies in the homeowners association stopped answering her calls. I saw her once after that, standing on her porch, sunglasses hiding her eyes, shoulders slumped like the weight of her own lies had finally crushed her. She looked at me across the street, opened her mouth like she wanted to scream, then closed it. No words left. No excuses. Just silence. And I'll be honest, I didn't feel bad. Not even for a second. Because karma doesn't whisper. It roars. You ever stand there, staring at something so insane your brain just refuses to process it? That was me. 7:14 a.m., coffee halfway to my lips, watching smoke curl out of my mom's dented old mailbox. And then pop. Not an explosion big enough to kill, but loud enough to send 3 squirrels sprinting for their lives. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, I muttered, clutching my robe tighter as the acrid smell of burnt paper hit me. My mom's mailbox, our mailbox, looked like it had just been part of some backwoods fireworks experiment gone wrong. And I already knew exactly who did it. The Karen sisters. Now, if you've never met Sandy and Carla, trust me, you're lucky. Imagine 2 women in their late 40s. Platinum hair that's just a little too fried from bleach, sunglasses the size of dinner plates, and matching pursed lip expressions like they've been sucking on lemons since 1993. They run our HOA like it's a personal fiefdom. And they hate my mother. Why? Because Mom, God bless Harris, the only person in this neighborhood with the guts to tell them no at HOA meetings. No, she won't trim her hedges to their approved shape. No, she won't pay a fine for having a bird feeder. And no, she definitely won't hand over her vote when they're scheming to pass new rules. Apparently, last night's meeting got heated. Mom called them out for mismanaging funds. I didn't know just how deep that rabbit hole went yet. I was still staring at the smoking mailbox when Mom stepped out, apron on, hands dusted with flour. "Oh, Lord above, what happened?" she gasped, rushing toward it. "Don't get close," I said quickly. "I think it was a firecracker or something worse." I heard a pop. Her face went pale. "We need to call the sheriff." Yeah. Except when the deputies came, things took a sharp turn. Officer Mallory bent down, poked the charred metal, then straightened up with a frown. "This wasn't just a firecracker," he said quietly. "Looks like someone tried to rig a homemade explosive. Not enough to take down the box." But he trailed off. "Wait, explosive?" Mom's voice went up an octave. The officer's jaw tightened. "Postal inspectors are gonna want to see this. Tampering with mailboxes is a federal offense. If there's an explosive involved, that's FBI territory." I glanced at Mom. Her lips were pressed so tight, I swear you could have sliced cheese with them. We both knew without a shred of doubt who had done it. But proving it? That was another story. The problem was, Sandy and Carla were slippery. Over the years, they'd left snide notes, vandalized our garden, even accidentally blocked our driveway with their SUVs. But they were always careful, never enough evidence to stick. This time, though, they'd gone too far. And oh boy, karma was about to clock in for a double shift. The FBI agent who showed up 2 hours later, Agent Russell, wasn't the type to play games. Tall, dark suit, eyes that scanned everything like he was already 10 steps ahead. He took one look at the mailbox, then turned to Mom. "Has anyone threatened you recently?" Mom hesitated, then said flatly, "The HOA board president and her sister. They don't like me very much." Russell's brow lifted. "Names?" When she gave them, his pen froze mid-scribble. "Ha! Those sound familiar." I leaned forward. "Familiar how?" He didn't answer, just asked if we had any security footage. Lucky for us, I'd installed a cheap motion-activated camera after the last time they tried to egg our front door. We pulled up the feed from last night, and there it was, grainy, but clear enough. 2 figures. Hoodies. Gloves. One of them laughing in that sharp, nasal way you could recognize from a mile away. "Oh my God!" I breathed. "That's Carla." Russell leaned in closer, froze the frame. "And that's enough for me to get a warrant." Now here's where the twist slid in sideways, because while the FBI was busy prepping to knock on their door, Mom decided to dig through her own files from the HOA, and what she found? Oh, it wasn't just mismanagement. It was fraud. I mean, forged signatures on HOA checks, maintenance expenses that didn't exist, landscaping contracts for work that was never done, and the name on almost every one of those payments. A little shell company registered under Carla's husband. I swear my jaw actually dropped. "They've been stealing from the HOA for years," Mom whispered. "And they think a mailbox stunt is gonna scare me?" It was one of those moments where I almost felt sorry for the Karen sisters. Almost. The raid happened faster than I expected. 2 black SUVs? For agents? And a battering ram that Hank Felithi didn't have to use because Sandy answered the door mid-morning in leopard print leggings and a face mask. The look on her face when she saw Russell? Priceless. By noon, the street was buzzing. Neighbors peeking through blinds, phones glued to their ears, kids on bikes circling for a better look. The sisters were led out in handcuffs, Carla shrieking about harassment, Sandy swearing they'd sue everybody. And here's the kicker, because I didn't think this day could get any juicier, Russell came back to our place, dropped a manila folder on our porch table and said, "Thought you'd want to see this." Inside, copies of sworn statements from 3 HOA members saying they'd been pressured into signing over proxy votes, plus a 4th who swore her signature on last year's budget approval was forged. "Looks like you were right," Russell said with a small smile. Your HOA presidents are looking at federal fraud charges on top of the explosives count. Mom let out a long, slow breath. Well, bless their hearts. I swear there was a glint in her eye when she said it. But the sisters weren't done trying to spin it. From their holding cells, they somehow managed to get a statement to the local paper claiming Mom had planted the explosives herself to frame them. I mean, really? As if my mother has the time or the interest to pull off something that stupid. Of course, that little smear attempt backfired too. The FBI released the security footage to the sheriff's department, and the local news ran it on loop that night. You could practically hear the neighborhood's collective gasp when Carla's laugh rang out over the grainy video. And yet something about Russell's earlier comment that he'd heard those names before kept gnawing at me. Turns out, Russell hadn't just been making small talk when he said he'd heard those names before. 2 days later, he called Mom and me into the sheriff's office. We sat there in a cramped little interview room, the kind with bad fluorescent lighting and a faint smell of burnt coffee, when he dropped the real bomb. They're already under investigation in 3 other states, he said, sliding a thick file across the table. Wire fraud, forgery, HOA fund embezzlement. Different neighborhoods, same playbook. Move in, get on the board, control the votes, drain the budget. I blinked. Wait, they move from state to state doing this? He nodded. They've been running the scam for over a decade. We've got a multi-state task force tying it all together. And now thanks to your security footage we got them on a federal explosives charge. That's the nail in the coffin. Mom shook her head slowly, like she couldn't quite believe it. All this time, they were smiling in my face at HOA meetings, and the whole thing was one big con. Russell leaned back in his chair. Once we wrap this, you and your neighbors are going to have a strong civil case. I'd advise speaking with an attorney about a lawsuit for damages. Between the fraud and the felony charges, there's a good chance you'll recover some of what was stolen. For the first time in weeks, Mom actually smiled. It wasn't a smug smile, it was the kind that comes after a long fight, when you finally see the tide turn. Guess they picked the wrong mailbox to mess with, she said softly. The trial that followed was a circus. The Karen sisters' attorney tried to argue the explosives were a prank, but the FBI's lab reports left no wiggle room. Add the piles of forged HOA documents, the bank transfers to that shell company, and testimony from victims across 3 states, and the jury took less than 4 hours to come back. Guilty. On everything. When the verdict was read, Sandy went pale, Carla started crying about how the system was against them, and Mom just sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, not saying a word. I think that silence hurt them more than anything she could have said. In the end, they each got federal prison time, restitution orders, and multiple felony convictions that'll follow them forever. The HOA elected a brand new board. Neighbors started speaking to each other again, and Mom, well, she finally got to plant that bird feeder in peace. As for me, I learned something watching this whole thing unfold. People like the Karen sisters always think they're untouchable right up until the law reaches out and taps them on the shoulder. And when it does, it's not just justice, it's poetic justice. If you enjoy true HOA takedown stories like this one, full of scams exposed, lawsuits won, and karma hitting hard, subscribe to our YouTube channel for the next unbelievable case. My hands were shaking when I saw armored trucks roll into our cul-de-sac that bright Saturday morning. Sirens wailed. Radios crackled, and my 7-year-old son was crying because his toy had just turned into a neighborhood crisis. How in the world could anyone mistake a plastic rocket ship for a bomb? The chaos hit like a hammer. Blue and red lights bounced off garage doors. Neighbors peeked through curtains, and Karen, the queen bee of our homeowners association, stood on her porch clutching her phone like a hero in her own fantasy movie. Her eyes were wide, her lips pursed tight, and I swear I heard her whisper, "I told them I saw something dangerous." Dangerous. My son's toy rocket had duct tape on it because he tried to fix the fins with my packing tape. That's it. That's all. I remember yelling, "It's a toy. It's just a toy." My voice cracked and the SWAT guy shoved me back, his vest hard against my chest. "Sir, step aside. We can't take any chances." "No chances." over a $10 rocket from Walmart. My son clung to my leg, sobbing, "Dad, I didn't mean," and my throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. And Karen, oh, Karen, she smirked, like this was vindication, proof of everything she'd complained about since we moved in. Too many projects in my garage, too much noise, too much traffic. And now, apparently, a homemade bomb. She folded her arms and gave me this smug little nod as if to say, "Finally, they'll see I was right about you." But God, did it backfire. The SWAT team spread out across my lawn, shouting commands. Boots pounded against the sidewalk. Metal clattered as shields hit the ground. My son's little rocket sat there in the grass, duct-taped and harmless, surrounded by men with rifles drawn. The sound of Velcro ripping as they adjusted their gear was like something out of a war movie. My neighbors gasped. Someone screamed and I could hear the buzz of Karen's voice. "Yes, officers. I saw him with wires and tape. I knew something was wrong. I knew it." I wanted to explode. "He's 7. I shouted, voice raw. "Do you hear yourself? He's a child." The officer nearest me glanced down, his jaw tightening. I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, but protocol kept him moving. They circled the rocket. One crouched, poked it with a long pole, and after 2 eternal minutes the bomb tech sighed, lifted the toy and held it high. "It's plastic. It's a toy." The silence that fell was deafening. My son hiccuped through his tears. My wife, barefoot on the porch, whispered, "Oh, thank God." And me, I looked straight at Karen. My hands shook, my chest heaved, and I whispered under my breath, "You're done." But Karen wasn't done. No, she doubled down. It looked dangerous. She shrieked, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You can't blame me for being cautious. What if it had been real? What if it had exploded? I saved us." Neighbors turned. Some shook their heads. Others muttered under their breath. A man across the street barked out a laugh, bitter and cold. "Saved us from a toy rocket. Lady, are you kidding?" Karen's face reddened. Her lips trembled, but she tried to hold her ground. "I was just being a responsible resident." She snapped. Responsible. The sight of my boy clutching my wife's leg, still crying, told a different story. My blood boiled. And just then, the officer in charge stepped forward. Helmet off, sweat glistening under the sun. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "Ma'am, you filed a false report of a bomb. Do you realize the resources you've wasted? This is a federal matter." Her jaw dropped. What? No, I didn't file a false report. I called in what I saw. But it was too late. The neighborhood was watching. The kids were whispering. Phones were recording. Someone snorted. Someone else muttered. Classic Karen. And me. For once, I didn't even have to say a word. Karen tried to wriggle out of it. "I'm on the Homeowners Association board." She snapped. "I have a duty." "Your duty," the officer interrupted, his tone sharp, "is not to cause a panic with baseless accusations. You've put people at risk today." I swear, I felt a chill of satisfaction run down my spine, like justice was cracking open right there on my lawn. Karen's face twisted, her voice pitched higher. "You can't fine me for being careful." But they could. And they did. The fine wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was thousands of dollars. Add to that the Homeowners Association emergency meeting that followed and the fury of neighbors who'd had their Saturday wrecked by Karen's paranoia. She was cornered. For once, the queen of complaints had no one left to back her up. But let me tell you, the drama didn't stop there. That night, long after the police had left and my boy was finally asleep, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor Jenna. "Check Facebook. Karen's already spinning her story." I opened the app and there it was. A long post from Karen, claiming she had acted heroically and saved families from danger. My jaw clenched. The audacity. Comments rolled in beneath, some defending her, most calling her out. One said, "Lady, it was a toy. We all saw it." Another wrote, "You traumatized a child. Shame on you." And then, twist of all twists, someone posted a screenshot from Karen's private homeowners association chat. She'd bragged earlier in the week about teaching that family a lesson, because she was tired of our junk cluttering the block. My hands shook as I read it. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had plotted this. When the screenshot spread, the tide turned fast. People weren't just angry. They were livid. I could almost hear the neighborhood whispering like a hive stirred up. And the next homeowners association meeting. It was brutal. Karen strutted in with her binder, her pearls, her forced smile. But the murmurs cut through the air like knives. My wife squeezed my hand and I could feel the energy shift. For once, it wasn't us against Karen. It was Karen against everyone. Voices rose. Accusations flew. You lied to police. You scared our kids. You wasted tax dollars. Karen's voice cracked as she shouted back. I was protecting you. Protecting. No one believed her anymore. Not after the screenshots. Not after the fines. Not after the image of a sobbing child under flashing lights. And then came the final blow, a motion to remove her from the Homeowners Association board. The vote. Overwhelming. Her allies looked away, embarrassed, while hands shot up one after another. Karen's face went pale. Her lips quivered, and for the first time since I'd met her, she had no words. The sound of the gavel hitting the table echoed like thunder. Karen was out. Just like that. I won't lie. I exhaled so hard it felt like I'd been holding my breath for years. My wife leaned against me, whispering, "It's over. My son, too young to understand all of it, just asked the simplest, saddest question. Dad, why did she call the police on my rocket?" My throat tightened. How do you explain hate? How do you explain paranoia? I ruffled his hair and told him, because some people can't tell the difference between danger and imagination. But you keep imagining. Don't let anyone stop you. Even now, I hear echoes of that day. The sirens, the shouting, the gasp of my son's cry. And I think of Karen, sitting alone in her big house, stripped of her crown, paying off her fines, scrolling through angry comments she can't delete fast enough. Was it worth it? Karen, was it really worth it? Because in the end, she didn't expose me. She exposed herself. So tell me, who was really dangerous here? And that's why, no matter how twisted the world feels, I believe in karma. Because sometimes, right when you least expect it, the universe serves up justice on a silver platter. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride, and if you enjoyed hearing about how Homeowners Association Karen finally got what she deserved, make sure to drop a comment on whether you think she was right or wrong. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more unbelievable neighborhood drama. I swear, I'll never forget the sound. That sickening thud like someone dropping a sack of wet sand echoed across the driveway, followed by the high-pitched yelp of pain. And when I turned around, there was Karen, standing over my nephew's service dog, smirking like she'd just won some petty war. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, my voice cracking so loud I startled even myself. My nephew, Adam, only 16 and barely able to walk without that dog's help, was frozen. His face pale, his hands trembling. I could see it, his chest tightening, his balance failing. He didn't even try to hide the tears. Karen, of course, just scoffed. "It's not a real service dog. This is a neighborhood with rules. Dogs aren't supposed to be in the community garden." Her voice was syrupy with condescension, the kind that makes you want to scrub your ears with sandpaper. Adam's golden retriever, Scout, whimpered and tried to stand, his front legs shaky. I felt my blood pressure spike. This wasn't just a neighborly spat anymore, this was cruelty. You just assaulted a service animal, I said, stepping toward her. That's a felony in this state. You know that, right? Karen rolled her eyes. Please. You people forge those papers all the time. It's fraud. And I'm going to tell the HOA. Fraud? Forge? The way she spit the words out made my jaw lock. She had no idea that Scout certification was 100% legitimate or that Adam had medical documentation thicker than her HOA rulebook. But Adam's knees buckled before I could say another word. He stumbled forward, then collapsed hard onto the pavement. Adam! I dropped to his side, my heart hammering in my throat. He was clutching his hip, grimacing in pain. I knew that fall wasn't just from shock, been recovering from surgery, and without Scout bracing him, he was defenseless. That's when the sirens came. 2 squad cars, lights flashing like some surreal disco, rolled up to the curb. A neighbor must have called, maybe they saw Adam go down, maybe they heard me screaming. Either way, Karen's smirk faltered when Officer Ramirez stepped out. What's going on here? He asked, glancing from Adam to Scout to Karen. She attacked my dog, I blurted, pointing straight at her. He's a service dog, and she just dropped him on the ground. On purpose. That's not true, Karen snapped. They're lying. That dog's not even certified. It's all forged paperwork so they can sneak him into places. That's the real crime here. I could see the way Officer Ramirez's brow furrowed. He wasn't buying her rehearsed indignation. Ma'am, he said slowly, you're aware that interfering with a service animal is a criminal offense? Karen laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. Interfering? Please. The HOA president, which I happen to be, has the authority to enforce rules. And this mutt isn't exempt. But Ramirez wasn't alone. His partner, Officer Delgado, had already crouched beside Scout, reading the tags, scanning the microchip. This is a registered service animal under federal law, she said. Paperwork checks out. And just like that, Karen's expression shifted from smug superiority to something like panic. Still, she doubled down. Well, maybe they forged the tags. People commit fraud all the time. Ma'am, Delgado cut her off sharply. Those are felony accusations. Do you have evidence of forgery? Karen's lips pressed into a thin, colorless line. But I know. That's enough, Ramirez said. Turn around. You're under arrest for animal cruelty and reckless endangerment. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was the sweetest music I'd heard in months. Karen sputtered, twisting to look at the gathering crowd. You're all making a mistake. This is harassment. They'll be hearing from my lawyer. Oh, she wasn't kidding about that last part. The very next day, she actually filed a lawsuit against us. Claimed we'd staged the whole thing to ruin her reputation. Said Adam had faked his collapse, and that Scout had pretended to be injured. If it wasn't so vile, it would have been laughable. But here's where karma gets delicious. Her lawsuit forced her to submit sworn affidavits, and one of those affidavits included a witness statement from a man named Gerald Whitaker. Except, there was a problem. Gerald didn't exist. The document was forged. She'd signed it herself, in sloppy cursive that didn't even match the fake signature. Our lawyer, a calm, razor-sharp woman named Danielle, didn't even flinch when she saw it. This is perjury, and filing forged evidence in a lawsuit. That's criminal fraud. The moment Danielle presented that evidence in court, the judge's eyes narrowed like he was staring down the world's dumbest con artist. Ms. Henderson, he said, his voice cold enough to frost the windows. You understand you've just admitted to creating false testimony under oath? Karen stammered. "To thought." "No," the judge interrupted. "You didn't think. You lied. And you wasted this court's time." The gavel hit like a gunshot. Adam sat beside me, his crutches leaning against the bench. Scout's head was resting in his lap, tail thumping gently despite his sore leg. We both watched as the bailiff escorted Karen out, her expensive heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that sounded like defeat. And the irony? The HOA had already been looking into her for other shady dealings, missing funds, unapproved fines, even rumors that she'd been forging violation notices to scare people into paying her directly. Once the arrest made the local news, neighbors started coming forward. Turns out, she'd been running her own little fraud empire under the HOA's name for years. The fallout was glorious. She lost her position, her case was dismissed with prejudice, and the county prosecutor slapped her with new charges for the forged affidavit. But the best part? The judge ordered her to pay Adam's medical bills and cover the cost of Scout's veterinary care. As we walked out of the courthouse that day, Adam let out a shaky laugh. "Do you think she'll ever stop?" I sighed, glancing at the cluster of reporters swarming her on the courthouse steps. "Not because she wants to, but because now, she can't." Scout gave a soft, contented woof, as if he knew the storm had passed for now. And just when I thought it was over, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. One of the reporters was holding up a printout. It was an email Karen's email sent the week before the incident. In it, she bragged about getting rid of that fake service mutt and making sure the crippled kid learned how the real world works. My breath caught. "She planned it," I whispered. "She actually planned the whole thing." Adam's hand tightened on Scout's harness. Then she got exactly what she deserved. The prosecutor didn't waste time. Within a week, the charges multiplied: animal cruelty, reckless endangerment, perjury, and yes, fraud tied to that forged affidavit. When they added wire fraud for sending the forged document by email, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Word spread fast through the neighborhood. HOA members who'd once feared her started talking stories about mysteriously inflated violation fines, suspicious special assessments, even homeowners who claimed she'd forged their signatures on consent forms for landscaping projects they never approved. One man had the receipts literally, her signature next to his name, dated months after he'd been living overseas. The district attorney's office snapped it up like gold. By the time her trial began, she wasn't the smug, manicured queen of the HOA anymore. She was pale, gaunt, her once perfect hair dull and unstyled. The courtroom was packed: neighbors, reporters, even a few former HOA board members who'd turned witness. Adam sat next to me, Scout at his feet in a brand new service vest, tail swishing lazily. When Karen took the stand, I could feel the tension in the air. Her lawyer tried to spin it was misunderstood, unfairly targeted, a victim of public hysteria. But then the prosecutor read her own email aloud, the one bragging about getting rid of that fake service mutt and humiliating Adam. The gasps in the room were sharp enough to cut glass. The jury didn't take long: guilty on all major counts. Sentencing day was surreal. The judge's voice was flat, but the words hit like hammer blows. 5 years in state prison. Restitution to every victim of her forged documents and fraudulent fines. Permanent removal from any HOA leadership, and a lifetime ban from holding fiduciary responsibility in any organization. Adam's eyes were bright, not with joy, but with something quieter. Relief. Scout leaned into his leg, as if anchoring him in the moment. When we walked out of the courthouse, cameras swarmed. One reporter shoved a microphone toward me. "What's your message for people dealing with HOA abuse?" I looked straight into the lens. Document everything. Stand up for yourself. And if someone uses fraud, forgery, or fear to control you, fight back. The law is there for a reason. Behind us, Karen was being led into a van, her wrists cuffed, her head ducked low. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't have to. Justice had already spoken. That night, Adam sat in the living room, Scout's head in his lap, the glow of the TV washing over them. "Do you think it's really over?" he asked softly. I thought about the lawsuit she'd filed against us, the one that backfired so spectacularly it blew open her whole scheme. "Yeah," I said with a smile. "That lawsuit was the last mistake she'll ever make in this neighborhood." And for the first time in months, the air felt lighter. If you believe in standing up against fraud and abuse, and you want more true justice stories like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel today. You won't want to miss the next lawsuit twist.